German authority decided to convert the camp to a detention camp to hold mainly Jews, but there were Jehovah's Witnesses, there were gypsies, there were gay and lesbian, um, and also political prisoner. I'm talking about German people. Political prisoners, they were not treated any better than we were. So it was a mixture of people there, but the majority was Jewish. Um, our day started in Bergen-Belsen with roll call. The roll call started early in the morning. We had to stand on the roll call till our supervisor came. They were young women in their 20s, 23, 24-year-old SS women. They were very, very cruel. They beat people along the way, and we also experienced a beating of one person in our hut because she began to speak directly. She had a complaint or something, and we were not allowed to speak to them directly. We had to have the responsible in the hut, if you had any complaint, to tell the responsible, which was called at the time blockälteste, and like the elder of the block, but she was in charge. And she then asked, as you couldn't, this woman directly sort of faced, I suppose, raised a sound or something, and she was taken out. We had to go out of the block and stand in a half circle and watch how she was beating her and kicking her. I don't even know if she survived, but it was a horrific experience. Just to warn us, that's it. That's what will happen to you if you speak to me or any other supervisor directly. You're not allowed to. So, and along the way, we saw a lot of beating around. After the roll calls, we got breakfast, which consisted of 2 slices of bread and black coffee. And then we got the lunch, which was turnips cut into square and boiling water. And in the evening again 2 slices of bread and black coffee. Altogether, if we take it scientifically, what we ate was very little. So if we want to go, we eat in a day, an adult person, normal adult person would eat between 2,300 and 2,500 calories. When somebody works very hard building site or doing a heavy sport or anything like, they would even eat 3,500 calories a day. Our intake of calorie was around 600 calories a day. This is an amount that you can't sustain a life. So when you see films and you see all these skeletons, this was the process. First of all, you become hungry. Eventually you began to starve. The body would eat itself from inside till you become a skeleton, and finally you died. That's how so many inmates died in concentration camps, and everybody looked like this. I remember these skeletons, they used to go around, and we also discovered later on that we were in the women's part of the camp where the hospital was. Now, if you think if I say hospital that people were being cured, but the hospital in Bergen-Belsen was there, purely taking in the sick people. They survived maybe a couple of days a week. They died, and we saw these women walking around. They were very, very weak, they hardly moved, and they occasionally fell down. And it's happened regularly during the day. And we used to play, we would stop playing and waiting to see what will happen to that woman. Occasionally, she would get up again, and we would sort of say, oh, she has another couple of days or another chance to live. But most of them never got up. So we actually saw people die in front of our eyes. Then we still played. We had a little green area there. We would play. There was a girl. She was about 15-year-old. So she would organize sort of singing things and games and to organize it. So we were occupied there. And this under this condition, of course, we were living there. It was horrific to see. People were dying every day from starvation and disease, mainly typhoid. And when you got a typhoid, it's a contagious illness. You get diarrhea, you get dehydrated, eventually you have no strength to collect your food, and finally you die. And so every day people were dying, 70, 80, 90 people, and there was a mortuary not far from where we lived, and in the evening a lorry or a cart with horse would come. They would pick up all these corpses. It was the job of, they called them Sonderkommando, the special commando. These were men from the main camp would come with this cart with two wheels, and they would go to every hut. There were 80 huts in Bergen-Belsen, and would ask if anybody died. If anybody died, they would pick up one by leg, one by hand, throw it onto the cart, and once the cart was full, it would be brought into the mortuary, and in the evening it would be taken to the crematoria. So in other words, the chimney that we saw was the crematoria in Bergen-Belsen to burn the corpses for the obvious reason. The German, they hoped for victory, I suppose, and they could say afterwards, in Bergen-Belsen, nobody died. We haven't got graves or graveyard because the corpses were all born. And so during the night you could see the glow coming out. During the day, the smoke. And the crematoria went 24 hours every day from the day we arrived till we were a couple of days before we were liberated. And of course the smoke would spread over the camp, so there was a constant stench of burning flesh. The life was very cruel, starvation, and seeing all this, what is happening around, I was becoming very weak as well. By the time we were liberated, I was only a skeleton. I was put in the hospital right away. But in January already, the German army, not January 1945, the German army was on retreat, and they took the prisoners with them. And so when they were retreating from Auschwitz, Auschwitz was a slave labor camp, but it was also an extermination camp. Over 1 million people perished in Auschwitz. Many of my relatives perished there. So they took the people by march. They marched towards the east, towards Czechoslovakia and Germany, because the railway line were bombed. They couldn't bring the train anymore to Auschwitz, and the roads were also bombed. They couldn't bring lorries. So they marched the people for hundreds of kilometers. These marches were huge, like 10 of thousand in a single march. I remember a story I read about marches, and this particular march, there were 15,000 left Auschwitz. By the time they reached the destination, only 5,000 were left. 10,000 died on the way. They froze to death, or they couldn't cope, couldn't go any further. And anybody that couldn't go any further, the German army just shot them and put them things. So people knew that they have to keep up. If they don't keep up, they will shoot them, you know. So many people suffered in this march horrendously. So at the time, many people came to Bergen-Belsen. It is estimated that over 35,000 came to Bergen-Belsen. The camp was built for 25,000 inmates. So suddenly, over 1 or 2 weeks, the population of Bergen-Belsen grew to over 60,000. There was no room for the people, there was no food. The huts that were built for 150 to 200 people contained 700, 600, 700 people. So you can imagine the congestion with all these people being inside. And so in Bergen-Belsen, epidemic broke out, epidemic of typhoid broke out. And suddenly people began to die in their hundreds. It was estimated that per day in February, March, April, per day over 500 people were dying, 17,000 per month. Of course, the crematoria could not cope with that amount of corpses, so they threw the corpses just out of the huts. And you could see everywhere piles of corpses, area full with corpses. And so even our grass area where we played, suddenly there were small piles of corpses. But we continued to play. Where did we play? Among these corpses. We used to run around. We used to play hide and seek. We didn't hide up behind trees or wall. We hid behind corpses, dead corpses. So there are no words to describe as a child what I saw in front of me, you know, when you thought of this. It was just horrific. But as children, we somehow didn't grasp what was happening around us. So finally, after the war, we survived quite well. I must say myself, I never had nightmares. I just put the whole thing behind me. For 55 years, I never spoke about it at all. To nobody. My wife, for example, died in 2003. She only knew that I am a Holocaust survivor. She never knew what happened to me because I didn't even tell her. I only started to speak in 2004, and that's how my children found out, because I didn't tell my children either. When I started to write articles into magazine about my experiences, so they found out about me. But anyway, at the time, we knew it's only a matter of time before we will be liberated as well, because the people that came from Auschwitz told us that the German armies retreating. Up to then we didn't know. And eventually the American or the English will be in our, we will be liberated. But it still took about 4 months before we were liberated. But unfortunately, it was 7th of March 1945 that tragedy struck us as well. I remember that morning, that day, I will never forget it. When I woke up, I saw my mother and aunt were crying, and I said, why are you crying? What happened? And they told me that my grandmother passed away. And so that morning, this Sonderkommando came to the room. We had to strip my grandmother. She was like a little baby, just skin and bone. And they just picked her up, one by leg, one by hand. She was thrown on this cart. She was wheeled out and thrown on the pile of corpses outside. We were stunned. We just sat there for a couple of minutes. There was no crying because people already had no tears to cry. And I, as a kid, ran out to see when my grandmother was buried. But of course, she was buried under other corpses, so I never saw her again. But as I said, we expected liberation, and eventually it happened on the 15th of April, 1945. Again, a moment that you don't forget. We heard this rumbling going through the road in the center of the camp. We ran to the perimeter to see what is happening, and we saw jeeps and lorries and tanks coming through the camp, and the soldier with loud shouting, "This is the British Army, you are being liberated." We didn't even know what liberated meant, but we knew we were free. And so it is 15th of April, its anniversary. Each time I have a little drink and say, I'm here, But that's how my incarceration ended. We were reunited with my father. My father survived again. We went back to Slovakia. We got everything back. As it happened, one of these collaborators, lived in our house and managed other farms that belonged to Jewish people. So nothing was destroyed, because normally when the Jews were taken away, the neighbor would ransack the place. So people don't have even photographs from their relatives that perished. But we were lucky in that respect. People ask me, even when I give the lecture, how come that there are so many family photographs in the book that I wrote. And I said, because this man was living there, it was left there. Mm-hmm. So we got everything back. And but in Slovakia, the situation wasn't very welcoming. We were not welcome as Slovak citizen that coming home. We were welcome as refugees, because we come from the western part of Europe. Slovakia was liberated by the Russians. So when we come, we basically come from the west to the east. And the rumor would go around, oh God, more of them are coming back that were taken away. So the couple of statistics, one is that out of a Jewish population of 85,000-90,000, only between 17,000 to 20,000 survived. Rest of them all perished in the Holocaust. Joseph Tiso was put on trial by the Czechoslovak government, because after the war, Czech and Slovakia again came together. He was sentenced sentenced to death by hanging for crime against humanity. Not necessarily what he did to the Jews, but what he did to his own people. Also, there was a big trial after the war. It was actually the first trial of perpetrators. These were the guards and the commander of Belgium. 49 were put on trial. 12 of them, among them the commander, Joseph Kramer, were executed by hanging. 19 were sentenced to different length of prison, and the rest were acquitted. They also arrested about 200 more guards that escaped, and they brought them back. They claimed that they only carried out orders. They did what they were told to do and never stood a trial. Many of them had blood on their hands, but they got away with it. I stayed in Slovakia, and then because already I joined a Zionist movement in Slovakia.
In Slovakia, sorry, was you, your brother, your father, and your mother?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we were all. There also my aunt and one of my cousins, two cousins. We stayed up to 1949 and emigrated to Israel. In Israel, I, of course, continued to study, and but at the age of 18, I joined the Israeli army. I participated in the Suez campaign in 1956. So again, I had to defend my life for the second time. But after the war, after the 1956, it was about 57, late 56. I went to Germany back, which nobody could understand. How could I go back? But I was studying engineering, and I said I want to get the best education, and therefore I went to Germany, where I studied up to end of 1950. In other words, it was end of 59, 60, and it was in the 60s that I came to Ireland. It's a story again. I didn't come here as a refugee, but I came here to set up a factory for Zip, for English industrialists. And I set up the factory, and I met a girl here, which became my wife, and the rest is history. Unfortunately, my wife got cancer in 2003. She passed away, and I met another lady. Unfortunately, yes. She's in trouble. It's that's the story. But as I mentioned, for 55 years I did not speak about the Holocaust. But when I started to write about it, and some magazine published this story, the media came up to me, and television, radio, newspaper, and the whole circus started. They wanted to know more and more. Eventually they wanted me to speak to schools. It was very difficult, but then it was about 2004 or 5 that I started to speak in school. So I traveled all over Ireland. I spoke to over 100,000 schools. I got many accolades since then. There is one of them, you see the figure there standing.
Yes.
That's a Person of the Year award, which I got in 2014, International Person of the Year. I also have a medal that I got from the president of the Federal Republic of Germany, Joachim Gauck. There is another president now, but he gave me this for the work that I do. Great honor, I must say. I got several doctorates. I have 3 doctorates, one in literature, law, and philosophy. One from Maynooth University, one from Trinity College, and one from Dublin City University, and all other different accolades for my work that I do. I not only lecture in Ireland, I travel. I was several times in the States, South Africa, in Europe. I'm going now on the 24th of September. I'm going to Berlin, where I am presenting a thing. I was in Bergen-Belsen back, where I gave a lecture to German students. So I wrote a book. I actually wrote 2. The second book I didn't write, but I participated in writing the book. And I'm working on a new project now, 3rd book, which is also very interesting story. I made 3 documentaries. One was my biography. One was one film which was called Till the 10th Generation. In other words, we should not forget Till the 10th Generation. The second film was called Close to Evil, which earned the best documentary here in Ireland a couple of years ago. And this was a film that I wanted to meet one of the guards of Bergen-Belsen that is still alive, a woman. Of course, I don't remember, but she probably come to our block, and she was there when we were there. And we filmed all along. We had witnesses about her and all this. In the end, she didn't want to meet me because she's still a denier. She's still alive. She's 96 years old now. And there is a case against her by a German historian, because when he saw the film and saw saw that she's a Holocaust denier, by the German law, this is a criminal offense. He took a case against her, and who knows? She might be the last one to be tried. Who knows? But she's 96 years old. It wasn't my intention. I have nothing against her. She killed 2 people. I just wanted to do some reconciliation with her, that a perpetrator and an inmate met, and we could speak, and she could at least apologize, but she was not able to do it, so I never met her. And the last film is, that film was called Close to Evil. In other words, that I was close to this woman who was close to evil. And the last one is more of the time we're living in today with the refugees and what's going on, which reminds me of the late 30s, what was happening to the Jewish people, that nobody wanted to take them, and this tragedy happened today. We have similar thing with the refugees. Nobody wants them. So the world did not learn, and also the atmosphere today, it's like in the 30s. So it's very dangerous. So the film is called Condemned to Remember. In other words, I'm condemned to remember the past, to warn the generation of today that it doesn't happen again.
I have a few questions. Thank you for sharing that with me.
How long it took?
It took us 1 hour and 10 minutes. and we're still, I think we haven't even touched the surface. I feel like there's still so much that you have to share, and
yeah, okay, well, I can't
share too much because you have to go to,
I have
yes.
yeah.
When do you have to leave?
Well, I have to have something to eat,
Something to eat, yeah.
and 3 o'clock
You're to be there.
well, I promised. You know how it is. She's expecting me
Me
now.
to see, yeah.
Yeah, but go ahead.
I think maybe 5 minutes will
Whatever.
just to
yeah, that's we can. Yeah.
to
You
kind
can
of
do 10, 15 minutes.
to-
maybe. Yeah, it's all right.
to wrap up.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the questions is, how long were you in the concentration camp for?
Well, I was in the concentration camp from November 1944. We were liberated on the 15th of April from the German, and then we were kept there in quarantine for up to towards the end of June.
Okay.
Because there was disease, and they wouldn't let us go because they were afraid that we can bring the disease outside. So we were kept in quarantine. We met my father. He knew at the time already. We got in touch. He knew at the time that we survived. We knew that he survived. I mean, that's a story as well, but
amazing.
I can't put it all.
Yeah.
It's too much. And we were about beginning of July of 1945. We were reunited with my father.
So it was November 1944 to July 1945 when.
That's right. That's
Okay.
to take all the time. Yeah. It was a little under a year. Yeah.
Okay, and I suppose another question is, when you moved to Israel, was it you moved with your full family or was it by yourself?
Well, I went actually on my own. I was the first person from the family that went to Israel. I went in February 1949, and then my brother and my parents, mother and father, they come in July 1949.
Okay. And your decision to go there, was it just because it was too unwelcoming? And
well, in Slovakia, as young people, I mean, my parents wouldn't have dreamt to live their whole life. Probably we wouldn't have dreamt leaving either. I should be living there still today and die. That's where I was born. But the atmosphere was not very nice, and I don't know, you wouldn't remember, but the Russian, there was a show trial in Czechoslovakia, where many Jewish people, leaders that became good communists and were leading the thing, and Stalin made the purge, and they were put on trial, and some of them were executed because they were afraid that they are spying. So the atmosphere was not good, and I joined this Zionist organization. We used to meet in Bratislava. I went to the college in Bratislava, and a couple of times all the Jewish young boys and girls, we used to meet there. We had a place and play games, and of course we were fed a propaganda, naturally, that the place we should live and spend the rest life is Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's come to it, eventually I joined one of these transport that we all went, all the young boys and girls, we all went. There are still people today, I know, that we come together to Israel, and then that's how I ended up in Israel, and that it was nearing to my 17th, 18th birthday. I had to join the army.
It's
and
mandatory.
I actually I was discharged from the army after 2.5 years serving in the army. But then in 1956 was the Suez Canal operation, and as a reservist, I
Had to go.
and we fought in the desert. I went right to the Suez Canal, and so it was tough seeing friends losing their arm, legs, and it was just butchery, it's terrible. Yeah.
And then after that, you went to Germany.
Yeah.
And then from Germany, what made you decide to come to Ireland?
Well, that's what I mentioned before. That's a story on its own. But I tell you in a very short way. I had a cousin. She worked as an au pair girl in London.
Yeah.
I was studying in Dortmund, Germany. And my cousin, one day, she picked up one of the English paper, and in the paper there was an ad that a person is looking for a manager to set up a factory in Ireland. And as it happened, my cousin saw it, and she went to her boss. She normally wouldn't even talk to him, and said, Mr. Copper was his name. Mr. Copper, you know that you will have a competition in Ireland, because he was a big industrialist in England, one of the largest manufacturers of zips. And he said, why? And she said, look, there is an ad. Somebody is looking for a manager to set up a factory. And he said, I won't have any competition. I put the ad. I want to set up a factory in Ireland. And he said, so why are you advertising in England? He said, well, at the time, in the 59, 60s, there were not, Ireland wasn't like it's today. It was quite primitive, I remember still children without shoes. So he couldn't, nobody come forward. And then he started to advertise in England. But at the time, 60s, all this trouble was brewing between the English and Irish, the English hated Irish and Irish hated. So none of the people come forward in England either. So that's what he told her. And she said, you know what, I have a cousin, he is just finishing a diploma engineer in Germany, maybe he will be interested. And so I got this a letter from this gentleman. He was a very wealthy gentleman, and he wrote, look, I have a proposition for you. Instead of writing it in the letter, I want you to come to London, and we will sit. If you take up the proposition, good, we will work together. If not, you will have a holiday on my account. And so I think I was at the time 20-odd year old. Well, for me it was adventure going to London. And we came to London, and after 2 days I sat with him. He was originally, he was a Jew from Germany, but he emigrated to England in the 30s. And he spoke perfect German, of course. I speak, I studied in Germany. And he said to me, I have a proposition. I want to set up factory in Ireland. I know that you don't have idea how to make a zip, but I will send you to Italy. You learn how to make it. This in the factories where I buy my machinery and everything. And then you do it. I want you to sign for 3 years. After 3 years, you can go, or you can run the factory on. Well, what have I got to lose? Lovely. adventure. I went to Italy for about 8 months, not because I needed it 8 months. After 6 months, 6 weeks, I knew how to make zips. I mean, it's not big thing, you know, it's machinery and management and all this I learned. But we're in Ireland. At the time in the 60s in Ireland, you had a unemployment over 23%. So a foreigner couldn't come to Ireland. And they thought when he was applying for me to get a visa, working visa, that this is all a sort of a story to get me here, you know. So it took 8 months. So I had a great life in Italy. I learned to speak Italian as well. And then I come here, and it was in the end of 59 or beginning of 60. And I met my wife. And so I'm here.
History. Wow.
I'm still here. I left in the company. I had my own company for manufacturing jewelry, and I retired in 2003 because I said, what the hell I'm working for? I don't need to work anymore. But now I have a new career. I'm
speaker.
busier than I ever was.
Wow.
I travel all over. Yes, when was it? Last Thursday. Where we are now? No, Thursday. This Thursday, I was in Tala in the library. I gave a lecture, and latest accolade that I got, which will be given to me in November, 20th November. It's from the Irish bar, you know, the
lawyers.
Yeah, the lawyers and thing. The Irish bar, it's the courthouse, you know, the thing. Behind it there is the library, the bar library. And they every year they have award for somebody or something. The human right person of the year. And it's about 2 weeks ago. I got a beautiful letter. I show it to you. Last year, the Irish Army got a human right person of the year, because they were sent to various places and keeping the peace. And this year, I'm getting the human right person of the year of Ireland, which is a huge honor. The press will be there. I will be able to invite guests. There will be a reception. It will be in the newspaper, and I don't know if television, but it's a big thing. And when one of the secretaries spoke to me on the phone and asking me, you know, if I will accept it, I said, of course. I said, what an honor. And then I said, how did you know about me? Where you know from me what I'm doing? He said, Tomi, you do. Who doesn't know what you're doing?
Brilliant.
So I show you the letter.
Yes.
It's just incredible thing, yeah.
Very good. I'm conscious that you have to leave in a few minutes, so I just have one final question for you, and that is, a lot of my audience would be younger people, and you have a lot of life experience and a lot to share. And I suppose the question is, what is either the best piece of advice you've gotten, or
the
what?
best piece of advice to young people, and I end of my presentation when I speak in school. We have racism in schools. We have racism on the street. I don't know if you read just a couple of days ago here in Dundrum. 2 Muslim girls were attacked and beaten up by a group of things. So there is racism, there is not much publicity around. But if they happen to see something like this happen, not to become bystander, get involved, stop it, inform the authority, inform the teacher that if there is somebody because, and this is important to remember, Holocaust did not start with gas chamber. Holocaust started with whisper, with dubbing, with taunt, with abuse, and finally murder. I'm not suggesting that that could happen, but we have to stop it at the whispering time. So this doesn't spread. The atmosphere today, unfortunately, is very bad. It's like in the 30s. Many leaders mentioning this, they're saying it openly. So, not to become bystander, make sure that if in the school they see any bullying going on, racial bullying, because we are a multinational society now. You're from Ukraine, I'm from Slovakia, and there are a lot of people from various African states. And again, there is this racial thing of colored people. We have to protect them, and they should integrate to our society as well. So that's my advice. Not become a bystander. Get involved and stop it.
Let your voice be heard if you see something.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you. That's everything for the interview. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You see, I get various